Dear students, welcome back to Aurelia Vlogs. Today we will complete Module 5 and the second part contains the following topics. First is Human Rights in India, second NHRC, third is SHRC and the fourth one is Conservation of Natural Resources and Human Rights. We can study Human Rights in India. The sections of Constitution contain 1. The fundamental rights, second one is directive principles of state policy and the third one is fundamental duties. I think you all have studied this in civics during your school time, but this is very important for your exam. What is the role of constitution? That's a sure question, so you have to study this in detail. So let me tell you a brief idea regarding fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are those which are included in Part 3 of Indian Constitution from Article 14 to Article 35 and they are known as Magna Carta of the Indian Constitution. There are 6 fundamental rights, namely right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies. There are a lot of articles here. One important article I will tell you, that is Article 21, which is for the protection of life and personal liberty. Next, we can know what is directive principles of state policy. They are an instrument of instructions which are enumerated in Part 4 of Indian Constitution to create a welfare state. It covers the articles from 36 to 51. It's a non-binding document. Why? Because it is not enforceable by law. But fundamental rights are binding documents. You have to remember this. Next, we can go to fundamental duties. It is also non-binding, just like our directive principles. Fundamental duties act as a reminder to the citizen of the country to continue their duty towards the country and society. There are 11 fundamental duties. I will say one or two: to abide the Constitution, to respect our national flag and national anthem, to protect our natural resources, etc. Now we can study what is NHRC. NHRC means National Human Rights Commission of India, which is a statutory public body constituted on October 12, 1993. It is responsible for the protection and promotion of human rights. The functions include to prevent terrorism, to visit jails, to enquire the violations of human rights and the study of the inmates of the jail and so on. You have to study all the functions of NHRC, that is at national level protection of human rights. Next one is SHRC. SHRC is charged with the protection of human rights or investigating any violations that occur within the respective state. It is the State Human Rights Commission. And it has also some functions just like to visit jails and study the conditions of the inmates of the jails, to encourage NGOs, to know whether there is any human right violation anywhere, etc. Now we can study CEDAW. That is CEDAW, C-E-D-A-W, which stands for Convention or Committee on the Elimination of all the forms of discrimination against women. You will be asked the question CEDAW. You will not be asked what is the right for women. Sometimes it will be asked as CEDAW. So you have to remember what is CEDAW. It's a convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. So it consists of 23 experts on women's rights around the world. Numerous laws are made against sexual harassment at workplace, indecent representation, prostitution, etc. Laws are made more stringent after Nirbhaya incident. Next, we can go to the next slide, that is CRC or Children and Human Rights. Once a child is born, he has to enjoy all the rights applicable to him. And the CRC is a right for the children under 18. Juvenile Justice Act 2015, Right to Education Act 21A, Child Labor Act. These are all some laws for protecting the children. Protection from physical violence, kidnapping, trafficking, drug addiction, etc. come under this. Even POCSO case, you all know about POCSO case. Always we are reading in newspapers and all. So that all come under CRC Act and they take the necessary actions against the culprits. Next, we can study rights of OBC and minorities and rights of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, rights of prisoners, science, technology and human rights. The first one is right of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Right against discrimination by hurting or boycotting any SC/ST person. Dumping waste in the gate of a place where SC/ST member lives. Insulting with their caste name publicly. These are all severe offences and punishments can be between 6 months to 5 years with fine. And you know Ambedkar has led such a movement for this SC/ST people, and as a result there is a lot of reservation for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe in our Indian constitution. Next we can study the rights of OBC. What do you mean by OBC? OBC is under the non-creamy layer where the income of the parents or the persons are much below than 1 to 2 lakhs rupees and all. So we can study that in detail. OBCs are socially and educationally backward classes and are entitled 27% reservation in public sector employment and higher education. So what is OBC? We always think that OBC is a Muslim. No, OBC means other backward castes that come under the non-creamy layer where the income is much low. Okay, next we can study the rights of minorities. Minority means it is not the majority of the population. So what are they? Who and all come under minority? Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, Jains and Parsis come under minorities under the section 2C of the National Commission for the Minorities Act 1992. Minorities' rights guarantee no discrimination based on his caste, creed and like that. Okay. Next we can study how can we protect our environment. Oh no, before that we have to study one more thing, rights of prisoners. Okay, I will tell you. Basic rights providing right to food and water, protection from torture, violence, racial harassment, right to have an attorney to defend himself, etc. are the rights for the prisoners. Prisoners have rights. They are also human beings. What to do? Certain circumstances made them in jail, but they have to be protected by giving basic rights. Okay. Next is science, technology and human rights. Scientists and engineers have human rights like freedom to conduct research, to access and communicate scientific information, to move within and outside their country, to cooperate internationally, etc. Now we can move over to the protection of environment. There are a lot of laws for the protection of environment. After the independence, the laws became much stricter. First one is Stockholm Declaration and Action Plan 1972. The 1972 UN Conference on Environment in Stockholm was the first world conference to make environment a major issue, where a series of 26 principles were adopted for the sound management of environment in the Social Declaration and Action Plan. Second one, Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. Once the water is polluted, prevention cannot be made. So we have to take prevention before polluting. And also How can we pollute? These are all coming under the Act of Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. You have studied about pollution in detail in module 2, so I don't think you need an explanation now. You have to remember acts with year. An act, if you write without year, you will not get marks. So remember maximum the years. Even if you can't study all the acts, when you study the acts, you have to remember the acts with the year. Okay. Next is Forest Conservation Act 1980. That is to protect the forest, to protect the aesthetic values of the forest. Next is Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. Again, these are all related to the pollution in air, the automobile exhaust, CFCs, etc. Next, Environment Protection Act 1986. We all know how this law is becoming much stringent to protect the environment. Next is Public Liability Insurance Act 1991. That is for providing immediate relief to the persons from accidents while handling hazardous materials in organizations or industries or so on. Next act is Biological Diversity Act 2002. This is for the preservation of biological diversity in India, for the sustainable use of resources, etc. And you know this because I have taught this in first module in detail regarding biodiversity, regarding sustainable development and all. Just check the module 1 playlist. Next, one more is the National Environment Policy 2006. That is again related to the protection of environment, how to prevent the depletion of ozone layer, how to minimize greenhouse effect, how to minimize global warming, which is going to be a serious issue in the future. So these are all the acts. You have to study the acts with year. Remember that? No act without year, you will get marks if you write. So write an act with year. Next, we can study some protocols. First one is Montreal Protocol. These are all related to environment. You can write all these things when you get a question regarding protection of environment. So Montreal Protocol is a global agreement to protect the ozone layer by phasing out the production of numerous substances that are responsible for the ozone layer depletion. You know, carbon dioxide produced by man. Actually, that is a very serious problem because mining and all will relate, which will evolve a lot of carbon dioxide gas into the atmosphere, and similarly automobile exhaust, etc. These are all trapping in the atmosphere, and what happens is that this atmosphere get warmed, and the warmth will lead to the hole in ozone layer, and as a result global warming will occur. Okay, next we can go to Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol is a global agreement to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions based on the scientific consensus that global warming is occurring and that human-made pollution is driving it. Okay? Next, we can study what is a green protocol. To overcome the mismanagement and improper dumping and wasting and burning of waste, Government of Kerala has announced a set of measures known as Green Protocol as a part of Swachh Bharat mission. Next, another one we have to study is National Green Tribunal, or it is called as NGT. NGT is a specialized body that was formed under NGT Act 2010 for handling any environmental disputes that involve multidisciplinary issues. In our country, there are a lot of states, and different states will have some problems, and whatever multidisciplinary issues are there, it will be solved by the NGT regarding the protection of forests, environment, natural resources, etc. Next, we have to study Environment Impact Assessment, which is also called as EIA. It's a tool to achieve the goal of harmonizing development activities with the environmental concerns. And it contains two types of principles. One is precautionary principle, second one is polluter pay principle. Precautionary principle means when an activity raises threats of harm to the human health and to the environment, precautionary measures should be adopted. We know precaution is better than cure. Similarly, in the case of environment also, the same is applicable, just like what is applicable in health. Next one is polluter pay principle. Here, the party responsible for producing pollution should be responsible for the damages done to the environment. He should pay. He will be liable to pay compensation. He will be liable to pay a lot of fine and all. And this is the end of, oh, sorry, one more session is the prevention and control of water pollution and air pollution. How can we control the water pollution and air pollution? You have already studied in module 2, Water Act 1974, Air Act. Then these were amended in 1988 accordingly, and CPCB and SPCB boards were formed. That is, CPCB means Central Pollution Control Board, that is at Delhi, which gives advice to SPCB. SPCB is a state pollution and control board at various state capitals in India. Then next is citizen suit provision in Water Act. Citizens can they can issue a suit in the court against this water contamination and all by the people, by the industrialists, etc. Next is how can we preserve the natural resources and human rights. We know Western Ghats is a very typical example for biodiversity. Similarly, endemic species in certain places. Then our Silent Valley in Palakkad. These are all some examples of biodiversity, and you have to study Western Ghats in detail and what are the reports framed for the protection of Western Ghats. Western Ghats is a mountain range that travers the states of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. It is divided into several hill ranges, just as Sahyadris, Nilgiris, Annamalai Hills, and Cardamom Hills. And Nilgiris, it is very famous for our Munnar, Coorg, and all. Kodaikanal, these are all coming under Ooty. These are all coming under Nilgiris hill ranges, and it's well known for its rich flora and fauna. It is recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is having a high level of biodiversity. So we have to protect Western Ghats, and what are the precautions taken? First one is Gadgil report. The frequent occurrence of natural resources, natural disasters like landslides, floods have brought into focus the conservation of Western Ghats in our country. Gadgil report was done by Madhav Gadgil, and here the panel classified 142 taluks in the Western Ghats boundary into ecologically sensitive zones, ESZ in a short form, 1, 2 and 3. That is, 3 ecologically sensitive zones were classified. Next, first point, the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel designated the entire hill range as ESA, that is ecologically sensitive area. Next, in ESZ1, that is ecologically sensitive zone 1, all the developmental activities such as mining, thermal plants, these are all were restricted. No new dams were permitted in ESZ1. Asked for a bottom to top approach rather than top to bottom approach, because they urge for decentralization and more powers to the local authorities, just like Gram Sabha and all. Next, the Commission recommended a Western Ghats Ecology Authority as a statutory authority to protect environment. Okay. Next is Kasturi Rangan report. Instead of the total area of Western Ghats, here only 37% of total area was considered. And a complete ban on quarrying, mining and sand mining was in ESA. Next, it distinguished between cultural and natural landscape. And the last one, current mining areas in the ESA should be phased out at the time of expiry of lease, Once there is a mine area and all, with after the lease expiry, it will not be given permission unless they check it, they study it very well. Then no thermal power stations will be allowed unless there is a detailed study. Next is red industries will be strictly banned. That is involving how the industries which pollute the environment by dumping waste or polluting air, etc. Next, made several pro-farmer recommendations, including the exclusion of inhabited regions and plantations from the ESAs. So, pro-farmer recommendations they made by excluding inhabited regions and plantations from the ESAs. And also 123 villages fall under the ESA purview. Next, how can we conserve the natural resources? We have already studied this in the first module. Over exploitation of ground resources, again I have taught in the first module. Over exploitation of marine fisheries, that's what we are going to study now. Marine fishery means rearing of fish in seawater or salt water and is a primary livelihood option for a lot of people. So Marine Fisheries Regulation Act is enacted to provide the regulation of fishing by fishing vessels in the sea along the coastline of the state. It includes regulation of mesh size to avoid the catch of juvenile fish, regulation of gear to avoid the overexploitation of certain species, reservation of zones to traditional fishermen, and declaration of closed seasons. So these are all for the welfare of the fishermen. Next, overexploitation of sand mining. Sand mining is the extraction of sand through an open pit, but sometimes mined from inland dunes, from oceans, riverbeds, and beaches. It is defined under Section 3E of Mines and Mineral Development and Regulation Act 1957. It's also called MMDR Act, and this law was implemented by government to prevent illegal mining. Sand is often used for construction purposes and as an abrasive, but sand mining gives a huge impact to the marine system. Sand mining is much serious issue because the beauty of the riverbed, the coast and all will be damaged. That's the main reason we have to protect sand mining. And what about marine fisheries? Marine fisheries, we have to protect the seafood. Okay, so what we can do is that we can regulate the mesh size so that the juvenile fish is protected, and also certain species overexploitation can be protected. And for the fisherman's sake, reservation of zones are there and declaration of closed seasons are there, again for the protection of the fishermen, so that they will be safe during floods, when there is calamities and all. Weather reports will show the calamities occurring and all, and the fishermen will be restricted to go for fishing and all. So this is for today, and module 5 is over, and I think you understood. If you have any queries, you can ask in the comment box. And thank you. Module 2, module 3 and module 4 I couldn't complete in this exam point of view because you have exams on December 21st, 2022. So module 1, we don't have multidisciplinary nature of environment studies in your text, and also module 5, most of the contents are not there in your text. That's why I focused on module 1 and module 5. So thank you so much, students. Okay then, bye bye.